Hello and welcome to Ottawa Experts. I'm your host, Barbara Balfour, and on tonight's show we'll be discussing how to heal from divorce. What do you do when the one you thought would always have your back ends up being the one holding the knife? How do you protect yourself, your assets, your children, your emotions? Well, here to talk to us tonight are three special guests, three experts who will be discussing the answers to these questions and much more. First, I'd like to welcome Jennifer Green. She's the author of just published book, Winning While Losing, The Upside of Heartbreak. Her journey with divorce first started 2 years ago, the day after Valentine's Day. Although it seemed impossible at the time, Jennifer has gone on to find peace and happiness, and she's here tonight to share with us how she got there. Thanks so much for joining us tonight, Jennifer.
Thank you, Barbara.
And next, I'd like to introduce Tara Vargas from the Separation and Divorce Reconciliation Resource Center. She's a relationship breakdown mediator and also the co-owner of the center. It's one of the few centers of its kind in Canada that provides all the services under one roof for people undergoing divorce or separation. Thanks for joining us, Tara.
Thanks, Barbara.
Later on in the show, we will be joined by Joyce Owen, who is a chartered financial divorce specialist and certified financial planner. She'll be sharing her financial advice for those of you who are contemplating divorce, already going through it or have been through it, or getting married. Jennifer, I'd like to start our discussion tonight with you. Your journey first began a couple years ago, the day after Valentine's Day in 2015. You had just come back from a holiday down south with one of your girlfriends.
Yes.
Your husband came to pick you up at the airport. Mm-hmm. What happened next?
He had said that as of now we're no longer married, and I've taken away your credit card, I've closed the joint accounts, you can see the kids tomorrow, I've taken away your house key. There's an appointment tomorrow to see the bank. Next week we're seeing a mediator, and you're just not coming home ever again.
And this was completely out of left field.
Right, exactly.
I can't imagine how that would feel. I mean, just listening to this fills me with rage. I can't understand how you're so calm about it today.
It's been a huge journey, really. I've had to work a lot on accepting that and just going through everything to be able to reach this point. And one of the things that helped me a lot was the writing.
And that's how your book was born.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't something that I really dreamed of doing all my life. It's just because of this situation that made it come alive.
What were some of your first instincts when you were going through the initial stages of coming to grips with the fact that you would be going through a divorce?
There was a huge amount of grief because it's a huge loss. You're losing somebody that you were with all those years, but you're also losing the life you once lived. So it's not just, a loss of one person. And I felt very guilty for my kids. I wanted to be with them. There was so much confusion over what was going on. There was a lot of anger, a lot of, sadness for sure, and loneliness in the very beginning. And
did you go through a mediator, or did you choose to hire a lawyer to handle your divorce?
Well, I'm on the Quebec side, so what we did was we went through mediation, but I got my own lawyer at the same time. So I needed somebody to give me my rights and outline, what I had on my side, and not just rely on one person to who couldn't really give advice all the time, because they told me mediators, they're not really giving legal advice, they're kind of just mediating the meeting. So they even recommended I get my own lawyer.
Tara, what's your experience as a mediator? Do you find a lot of your clients use one or the other or both? And can you give us a little bit of insight into when is it appropriate to get a mediator, and when is there just too much animosity to even consider it?
So we do, in the profession, we do use both. It's important that people do have an idea of, what their rights are, and although most mediators that are working in family law are trained within family law, and we are aware of a lot of the rules, there are certain laws that definitely lawyers, are sometimes better prepared to fully answer. So we do recommend to our clients that, that they use us, because really what mediators do is they do facilitate a conversation. And usually what happens when it's only lawyers involved is that it can be quite adversarial in an already adversarial situation. So a lot of times what people fail to realize is that when it's all said and done and that their agreements are done, they still have to co-parent and they still have to work together, and the relationship does have to take on a different form. And so what mediation does is it allows them to have some of those hard conversations around what do we want for our children still, and to kind of keep going some of the things that they had agreed on when things were going well and when they were in a good place. And so that's where mediation is great for, is to allow for that. There are obviously some lesser expenses as well. So for people who can find a way to get common ground and work together, then it works quite well. But we do work with lawyers in the city, and we welcome their input. And we have a team of lawyers that we consult with and make sure that everything that we're doing is what needs to be done. And so it's really, to me, it's a symbiotic relationship between the lawyers and the mediators in what we do.
Do you find that most of the time the couples who are seeking mediation are the ones with kids, or a reason to keep seeing each other after the divorce is finalized?
Almost always. I mean, there are times where we get, the odd couple that comes in, but really that's the purpose of it is, why would you want somebody else deciding the outcome of your children? And you get to decide in mediation a little bit about, the schedule that you want for your children and what's important moving forward. And creating those conversations is important because they have to happen even after you're no longer living under the same roof. And so I feel that our role is to just help facilitate those conversations and make sure that they're still agreeing on the same path, versus one letter coming from one lawyer and one coming from another, and then them hearing only the request instead of what can we do together to get through this as easily as we can. So that's really why I think there's a fundamental reason for why mediation can help.
Jennifer, what were some of the toughest conversations that you had going through the whole process?
Mostly with the kids, knowing what to do with the schedule and knowing financial situations around that. And there's different rules for different provinces when it comes to this. And so spousal support is optional in Quebec, and it's, I believe, mandatory in Ontario. No? Okay.
It's not mandatory, no.
Okay.
It's on the table.
On the table, yeah. It's on the table too in Quebec, but that was a huge thing.
Shock
that was
for you?
Yeah, and something that was ongoing arguments. It was never very simple to come to anything like a easy decision.
You mentioned the 5 stages in your book, the 5 stages including anger, bargaining, denial. But before we get to those stages, Tara, you provided us with a graphic on the 4 stages of a relationship, and I'd like to pull that up right now. So the first stage of a relationship is the honeymoon phase, right?
Right. So one of the things that that's been created with the Separation and Divorce Resource Center is a program called Rebuilding Relationships, and so it does focus on the stages that you go through in a relationship and how do you move through them. So in the first stage, it is the honeymoon phase, so everything's perfect and you see what you want to see and it's presented the way that you want to see it. And then as you move through the stages, you start to get bits and pieces of what a person is really like and how they respond in conflict situations, and are they sometimes more of more a victim versus a villain, and how do they respond. And then you start to see the true colors as they move through it, and then you end up in this space that is this cycle of the way that you argue and the way that you communicate. And so in a positive, healthy relationship, you're able to move through that and you're able to grow through it and come out on the other side, happy and stay in that happy place. And on the other side is a relationship that remains in turmoil because you're not able to ever come out on the other side. And most of that actually has to do with how you respond to yourself and how well you know yourself. And so the course really talks a lot about what is the relationship relationship that you have with yourself first, and what do you need first, and then how do you then relate to somebody else within that. So that's one of the major things that we work on is getting yourself right and knowing who you are, and then being able to enter into relationships, because a lot of times we rely on a partner to complete us instead of to be fulfilled on our own. And then and so we get a lot of that. Most of the reasons why people are going through what they're going through is because they can't agree, but also because they don't have a solid relationship with themselves first,
or they lost themselves.
They've lost themselves within that relationship. Yeah.
And Jennifer, your entire book is about that. Is about being a people pleaser.
Yes.
Your profession is that you're a registered nurse.
Yes.
So you are a caretaker by profession and by nurture. You know, you're a mom as well.
Yeah.
And you know, it's true what they say, when you run around worrying about pleasing everybody else, you, first of all, you don't please everybody at the same time, and you also forget about yourself in the process, and you really kind of rediscovered that in your book.
Yeah, definitely. It was something that I realized once everything happened, and that's kind of what this book is about, is finding silver linings in so many dark and tough situations, because maybe this wouldn't have been, this probably wouldn't have happened, this book, and this personal growth and development and all the reflections that I went through in order to get to know myself, like you said, to feel better, because it all begins with you, and you have to be able to know what you want. So, yeah, it's definitely something women, I think in general, we need to set boundaries, we need to say no, we need to not please everybody. There's a thing that's out and they'll say, well, you have the disease to please. So it's not helpful for anybody in the end.
I'd just like to remind our viewers that if you have any questions for our guest tonight, please call in at 613-728-1001. Again, that's 613-728-1001, and we're excited to hear from you. I asked you before to talk a little bit about the 5 stages that you mentioned in your book. As you were sort of in the thick of it all and grappling through it, can you go over a little bit about through some of the emotions that you went through and how you overcame them, I guess?
Yeah, sure. So the 5 stages of grieving, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, she's one of the most famous people that talks about it, and she works with palliative care. So the first stage is, well, first of all, the 5 stages can go in any order, but one of the 5 stages is called anger. Or denial first. So you're in shock, you just can't believe it. So that's what I felt initially. And
when you were sitting in the airport in that chair next to the baggage claim?
Yeah, just sort of like, okay, well, this is not happening. And
I want to ask you, was it even legal?
Well, apparently yes, because the mediator didn't seem to stop anything.
Okay.
Yeah. So then so after denial, it's usually anger, and that's when you're feeling that emotion, and it can be very motivating to kind of pick yourself up and move forward. So anger is really useful in a way. Bargaining, that's when people try to make a deal.
Is that with yourself or with your spouse, or
both?
All the above?
Yeah. So you kind of think, okay, well, maybe if I just do this, things will get better. Or, you know, you might say, well, if I tell him that, or I go to do this, or try to make things, you know, right, then maybe things will work out. The other stage is sadness, so depression. And you know, sadness is a normal response to something like this, and sometimes doctors or, you know, people in general, they might jump to some medication a bit early, and that doesn't really get you through to the core of what this is. It's better to feel the emotion and then get out of it that way. Like, the only way out is through, usually.
It reminds me of a saying I saw once that, you know, maybe you're not depressed, maybe it's just that you're surrounded by jerks.
Maybe, yeah. Yeah. So
that's true.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So yeah, and then you know, it's about having a really good support system when you're in that stage, and whoever is really great will stick with you during that time. And then you're into the acceptance stage finally. So.
And is that where you're at today?
Yeah, I am.
Yeah. And how long did it take you to get to that place?
I felt like once the book was published in May of this year, I felt like I had closed the door. I felt like that was it. And there was still a little bit lingering, and I guess at this point it's an ongoing process. I wouldn't say I'm 100%. And like I was telling you at one point about when I wrote the book and being a nurse, you know, when you feel like you have to get so much out of you and put it into this book, I feel like I just vomited everything that's toxic out into the screen.
It's a really good image, really good visual.
Yeah, and so after you throw up, usually you feel better,
and
right?
You're a nurse, you would know.
Yeah. And then 20% of that, or you know, you're kind of still not right, but you're getting there, and it's just a process, and eventually you're going to be okay. So.
Great. We're just about to go to break, but when we come back, I want to hear about some of the coping mechanisms that you used, some of the healing techniques to get you to where you are at, and I want to hear more about the mediation process. So don't go away. We'll be right back.
The following program is brought to you by Rogers Anyplace TV. Enjoy exclusive content for free. Visit RogersAnyplaceTV.com.
That was good. Let's go around again. That's fun.
Hi, I'm Dylan Black. Join us on Thursday right here at Daytime Ottawa Rogers TV. Hey, if you have a young kid in school, you'll know who Yaki is. Yaki's going to be here to help us get ready for his upcoming Halloween Spooktacular show. As well, speaking of Spooktacular, mentalist James White will be here to talk about his seance that's taking place at a mystery location. And we'll find out about the ITR Theatre Company's production of Shorthanded, a ladies' game. That much more Thursday at 1 p.m. on Rogers TV.
Join world leaders as they share innovative solutions for the pressing issues the world faces. Watch the One Young World Ottawa Summit exclusively on Rogers TV.
Welcome back to Ottawa Experts. We're joined in the studio tonight by Jennifer Green and Tara Vargas, and we're discussing how to heal from divorce. We actually have a caller on the line tonight. Nicole, are you there?
Yes, I am. Hello.
Hi, Nicole. Did you have a question for us tonight?
Yes. So my question is about adult children. So how can adult children of divorced parents kind of navigate through all the drama for getting together for the holidays when your parents remarried and they want to bring in their significant other? What are your recommendations for plans or how to navigate everything that comes with that?
That's a really good question, because often when we think about divorce, we think about kids that are sort of stuck in the middle, custody arrangements, kids that are staying at home. But what happens when the divorce happens after the kids have grown up and left for college, as it often happens?
Is your family usually I think it depends on the structure of the family. It depends on how that divorce happens. So, you know, there's lots of families where, you know, if the divorce has been, you know, sort of over the years and they're amicable, then sometimes families are more than happy to do things all together. If that doesn't happen, then a lot of times when it's for, you know, an adult child, is for them to say, you know, I'd like to come, you know, I'd like to come and see everybody. So, you know, can you tell me what your plans are? And then really it's navigating, going, you know, from house to house and place to place. And I think that also depends on, are you moving into when you have your own children? Because sometimes that happens as well when you're having your own children, and then everybody wants you, you know, to sort of, you know, accommodate them and what happened with them. And so
everybody
a lot of
wants
times,
a piece of you.
Right. And so sometimes that's when, you know, as you're getting older, you almost have to put your foot down a little bit and say, you know, why don't you come to us? And if you can't be adults about it, then either you're going to participate or you're not. And so I think it really depends on what the nature of that, how that divorce played out and how everybody is together. You know, ideally, if you can all get together and make it happen, then great. And if not, then it is really balancing time and kind of expressing, you know, I'd like to see all of you, and you know, I'll come for Christmas Eve with you and Christmas Day with you and Boxing Day. And that's really, really, you know, the age, once you get past about, you know, 16, 17, then that they're really able to navigate that a little bit themselves and sort of stand up and say, you know, what happened between you, but, you know, I don't want to be in the middle. And so good co-parenting wouldn't force somebody to make a decision, but it does happen, unfortunately, where parents have their own needs and they want to drive it. But I think if you're listening and parents are listening to their adult children and they're asking them, what do you want? What do you feel? That you can put aside what you want as a parent and really focus on them.
Jennifer, have you thought about what happens when, you know, your kids get older or your kids get married, or how do you navigate the holiday season?
Yeah.
What's the delicate dance that you have to do?
Well, it was my first Christmas I had my kids, so I was good during that time. The second year, like last year, I didn't have them, and that was the first time ever in my entire life not having them. So as a parent, it was extremely difficult for me. And this year I will have them, but yeah, I do think about that for the future, like how are they going to be able to decide, but I'm very open with them and they're really open with me, and I know we'll always come to a good decision for all of us. So as long as you keep the communication going, I think that's key.
And we're a blended family now, so
you went through a divorce.
So I went through, and my children were quite young at the time, and they're still young. So you know, we were a blended family with a 13-year-old, an 8-year-old, and a 5-year-old, and so you know, it can be really tricky as well. And you know, this year in particular, we've had sort of a set out schedule. I mean, the first year that I went through my separation, we actually managed to co-parent through it, and we did Christmas morning together with the children because we didn't want the pressure on them that first year. And although that was incredibly difficult as parents, wanting to spend Christmas with someone where you weren't really getting along, we decided to do that. And then the next year, we made it so that, you know, everybody, you know, the kids had morning with one and afternoon. And then this year, we had a unique, we've just moved into a new home, and the expression was that the children had expressed that they wanted to wake up in the morning at our house, and that wasn't really the way the schedule was supposed to be. And we ended up going to, you know, sort of our significant ex-significant others and saying, what do you think? And you know, there's been flexibility on that side, and so it really is about working together and listening to what the children are saying and what they want, and then making that a priority, and just saying, you know, they didn't decide for this to happen. And it's, you know, it's not divorce that hurts children as much as the way that you divorce, and
sure, it's
the way
it's not what happens to you, but it's how you react to it.
Exactly. And so you have, you know, I feel that we have an opportunity to go through the hurt of divorce, which I don't believe anyone really goes into a relationship saying, I'd like this to happen. And whether you're the person that's been left or is the person leaving, we have an opportunity to help children move through that. And so, you would hope that people would get to a point where they could say, okay, you know, just come and go as you please. And, you know, let's make it work as best as we can so that we all come out feeling good and we all get to have a great time at Christmas.
Some great advice for our caller, Nicole. Nicole, thanks for watching and for calling in. Jennifer, tell me a little bit about some of the coping techniques that you used. You used journaling.
Yes.
You know, forgiveness was a big one for you.
Yeah, and at the time when I wrote the blog, that's when I was going through so much stress. So at that time I was definitely not ready to forgive anybody, and I think there's a lot of forgiving, not just for the person you were married to, there's a whole family, there's like a lot of people involved, but there's also yourself. And so I wrote something back when I was not doing so well, but it's because I wanted to know more about it, so that when I was ready, then I'd be able to look at it and incorporate it. And so forgiveness, it's not really something that the other person even needs to know about. It's something that you do for yourself. So it's a gift to yourself, and you can do it for your own peace of mind, because that's what it's all about in the end. The person doesn't even need to know that you forgave them.
You know, I heard Oprah Winfrey give a definition of forgiveness that I really liked. It was something along the lines of letting go of the hope that things could have been any different.
Yes.
Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So you don't, just because you're forgiving somebody, it's not that you're saying what you did was okay and it's right, or I agree with that. What you're saying is just, okay, I accept it, it happened, and I'm moving on. I'm not going to let this control my life anymore.
And Tara, you had an interesting experience with a client who found forgiveness through an unconventional way.
Right, so we don't promote any violence in our rooms, but we did.
I already know I'm going to enjoy this story.
Everybody has a way of coping, and everybody has a way of closing chapters in their lives, and some of them are done, you know, right, and some of them aren't. And so I had a client, and they were very. They were actually what you would consider sort of the ideal clients. They came in and everything was fine, and I mean fine. It was at least amicable, and they had agreed on most things, and there was an infidelity that happened in the situation. And so they came in and they'd gone through everything and settled and everything, and it was, you know, basically the last minute, and they were signing everything. And she graciously got up, walked across the room, slapped him across the face, walked back, sat down. He looked at her, nodded. She looked at him, nodded, and they were done. And then after that, we've seen them since, and they're fine, and everybody's happy. And so
he knew it was coming.
He knew, and it was almost like an acceptance on, you know, okay, I get it, and that's what you needed. And hers was basically that's what you get. And it, you know, it closed things. Like I said, I don't promote anyone coming in and doing it, and we try, but you know, people's ways of responding to each other and getting closure is very, you know, very different. We've heard of, you know, clients that go in and they've got a pillow that's got, you know, their ex's name on it, and they've used that as a punching bag. And so there's lots of different stories that kind of come in on, you know, what people need to get through. And you know, it could be traditional like blogging or you know, which are great, and journaling, and sometimes it's not as traditional as we think.
Well,
you know,
rituals are really important too. You were telling me in the green room, and I've certainly heard about divorce parties where people go skydiving, or they, you know, they celebrate in different ways. They get a divorce cake, and those cakes range the gamut from, I've seen a cake in the shape of a golf bag with a sign on it that says, "Free at last, I'm going golfing." And I've seen cakes that, you know, feature the bride dragging the groom away by one leg with a sign that says, "Take him to the trash." Grooms being eaten by an alligator, dismembered in a jacuzzi. You know, but
Yeah, exactly.
And I've heard of people going through an amicable divorce and toasting with champagne. Does that happen often with your clients?
I don't hear a lot about the rituals after. So to be honest, a lot of times, I mean, anything that I would hear would be either through, you know, personal friends or through my own experience. But we don't get a lot of that feedback of people coming back and saying, this is what, you know, we sat down together. But what I do say is that if the clients leave the room, they may not walk out clicking their heels, but they will walk out at least having an appreciation for the other person. And I try and frame it that you almost have to fall in love with them in a different way. So you have to love them either because they're the parent of your child, or the word ex is I don't like it as much. I would prefer to say, you know, the father of your children or the mother of your children, because I feel that it frames it a lot differently, and the more you can see them the way that they are instead of the way that it didn't work out for you, I feel like it's better. So I don't get a lot of people calling me and telling me what the rituals are, but maybe I can ask clients to start doing that, and then we can start a book on all the rituals that happen, right?
Yeah.
So.
Tara, we're just about to go to break soon, but I want to hear more about a course that you run, and you're actually giving away a spot in that course to our viewers tonight. Tell us a little bit about that.
So the Rebuilding Relationships course is something that was actually developed by Diane Valaket, who's the owner, the other owner of the center. She's really the founder of everything that the Resource Center does, and her goal was really to create something that would help people to either determine, maybe there's a couple that's going through a really rough patch, but they're not in the place where they want to separate, and so if we can try and keep families together, we absolutely will at the Resource Center. And so the course just really develops the ability to understand yourself, to understand where things have come from for you. You know, Diane will speak about the blueprint. So basically your makeup and the way that you act and respond regardless of the relationship that you're in, and that we consistently attract people, the same person. So if you don't understand why you attract a certain type of person or why you're attracted to that person and what you're lacking in yourself, then it's hard to reestablish what your next relationship might be.
That's very interesting.
So it really talks about that.
Yeah. And how long is the course?
So the course is 12 weeks, and it's run in the evenings, and we run them both in the West End and the East End location. And it allows people to either reconnect with each other or at least figure out whether a reconnection can in fact happen. If you're too far apart, then maybe it won't. And for people coming out of divorce and are a little lost and not really sure who they are, it allows them to rebuild themselves so that then they can have a better relationship with themselves and potentially a future partner. So my partner and I actually did it together, and we were in what you would consider sort of that nice place in a relationship, and we found it really helpful moving forward. When little sort of quirks and things come up in our relationship, we're able to revert back and understand each other better. So it's great for healthy relationships, unhealthy, and then your own relationship with yourself.
That's great. So something for everybody. And Jennifer, you're also giving away a copy of your book, which is wonderful. So if you'd like a chance to win a package of items, including a spot in the workshop, a copy of Jennifer's book, and also a copy of a booklet of financial tips and tricks from Joyce Owen, who is our next guest after the break, please call 613-759-8622. That's 613-759-8622 to put your name in for a chance to win the package. Thank you so much for joining us, Tara. It was a pleasure. And we'll be joined by certified financial planner Joyce Owen after the break. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Play 4 games of bingo from the comfort of your own home each Monday at 7 p.m. for your chance to win money from our $2,000 regular bingo or $5,000 super bingo night. Kiwanis TV Bingo, Mondays at 7 p.m. on Rogers TV.
Bladder cancer. It's the 5th most common cancer in Canada. The most common symptom of bladder cancer is blood in the urine. Please, don't ignore this warning sign. If you see red, see your doctor. For information and support, visit cred.ca.
If you love fantasy football, make game time decisions with Gabe Morency, your source for the most thorough gridiron breakdown on television.
We have the best guests.
You would probably bet on that.
The sharpest cappers.
I don't care what the coach's record is overall.
And the finest minds in football. His name is Iron Mike Ditka.
Game time decisions is live weekdays only on the Fantasy Sports Network, the first and only channel for expert fantasy advice and analysis 24/7. Get the Fantasy Sports Network as part of the Rogers Super Sports Pack. Order through your remote on channel 450.
My name is Murray Kronick, and I've been volunteering with Rogers TV for about a year. Most important thing about volunteering is being reliable and showing up and doing the best you can and learning every time you're there. The favorite thing about volunteering is the team aspect. I've said before that television production is just like actually being on the field or on the ice. We're as much of a team as the actual sports teams are.
Hi, I'm Kathy Donovan, host of Refresh Your Passion, a speaker series for people who want to do more, be more, have more, and share themselves more in the world. Refresh Your Passion, only on Rogers TV.
Hi, good evening and welcome back to Ottawa Experts. I'm your host, Barbara Balfour, and we're discussing how you can heal when you're going through a divorce. The Museum of Broken Relationships started in Croatia when a couple who was splitting up decided to set up a museum in which they would display their leftover personal items. They started asking their friends to donate items left over from their breakups, and a collection was born. The museum became so popular that they opened a second location in Los Angeles. And if you can't make it to either location, you can check out some of their exhibits online, or you can even send some of your own mementos. It's some pretty powerful stuff. Check out brokenships.com. So what if you really want to hand on to everything you've got and disputes arise with your now ex over shared property? And how do you protect yourself when money is such an incredibly emotional issue? Here to guide us through the financial piece of it is our next guest, Joyce Owen, who is a chartered financial divorce specialist and certified financial planner. Joyce, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
So your role is actually one of very few in the country. It's very unique. Tell us a little bit about this designation. What makes it so special? What sets you apart?
Well, what happened was this designation actually started up in the States, and a financial planner there by the name of Carol Ann Wilson had a lot of her clients who came in to see her who went through a divorce and came out with horrendous results. So she felt the need to bring up this form of training, and it's really a certain aspect of financial planning where you're looking at what are the financial implications of, you know, separating, dividing your assets, and what are the long-term implications of this? How does it look? You're going through divorce. It's a time when you're afraid. You don't know whether you're going to have enough money, whether you're going to have
whether you're able to feed your kids.
Exactly. And you're going through all that emotional turmoil, and you need someone to help you in this stage, in this time of life.
Do you get a little bit of counseling background as well? I'm sure there's a lot of tissues passed around in your office.
You're right, there is. I always have a box of tissues right there on the table. And initially, when I first met with clients in this process, we'd all have tears. And it was after time, because you're empathizing, and then you realize that you get the strength to keep yourself in a box, but you're able to help your client as well. So, when they come in, they want to know, what are the things, like, I'm thinking of divorce, what do I need to do?
And do you find that a lot of people who are in that stage come see you, or is it more people like Jennifer who are kind of hit by a landslide and are sort of in a daze and come to you and say, oh my God, it happened and I'm on the receiving end of all of this?
It could be someone like Jennifer coming in, someone just thinking about it and wondering, they don't want to make that step till they know what it's going to look like, or someone in the process. Someone or a couple that have gone to see lawyers, and the lawyer sent them to me and say, okay, go see Joyce, she will help you, get all the numbers together, calculate equalization, and then show you the impact.
So what do you tell someone who comes to you and says, I'm thinking about getting a divorce? What do they need to know?
So the first thing I would say is, from Jennifer's story as well, is to make sure that you keep some money aside, because you don't know, if you're going to have any access to money, if your joint account is closed as Jennifer's was, what do you do? So keep some aside, or as you're working, put some aside. the second thing I would tell them is make sure you have a credit card or you have credit history. When I first came to Canada, I came from an economy where we operated, everything was cash.
Where did you come from?
From Zambia in Africa. So no one really used a credit card. And we came to Canada with money in our bank, but no one wanted to give us a credit card because we didn't have credit history. So it's difficult. So if you're contemplating divorce, I would strongly recommend that you get that credit history going.
Mm-hmm. How quickly can you build it?
Well, start borrowing and make sure you pay all your bills in time. So you want to have a good credit rating. Very, very important, because if you're going to be standing on your own 2 feet, you want to get a mortgage, you want to get that approval. So that's the second thing that I would tell them to do. The third thing is, before they leave their home, as soon as they start thinking about getting divorced, would be to get all their documents together. So it's
copies of everything.
Copies of everything, because it might be difficult to get that at a later date. So, your mortgage statements, your RSP statements, tax returns, deeds, make copies of everything.
Do you find, Joyce, in your dealings with clients that it's often one side that does all the finances and the other side is completely in the dark?
Quite often, yeah, there is an imbalance, and that's where a lot of the fear and the uncertainty comes from when you're looking at separating and you look at the financial part of divorce, because you have one partner, as you mentioned, who is the one who makes all the decisions, pays the bills, plans for the future, and the other spouse, sits back and takes care of another part of the marriage. So you have that imbalance, and that's where I can help them, because I can bring them both to the same level.
Jennifer, did you find there was an imbalance like that in your own relationship?
I tended to take care of a lot of the household expenses and bills and everything. I knew kind of the schedule of everything. And since I was pretty much doing everything all at that time anyway, he was very busy with work, and he was kind of more in charge of the bigger things like RSPs and that type of thing, investments. And so when it all happened, I felt like I didn't really know what was going on with the big things anymore. Mm-hmm. I knew how to pay all my bills. It wasn't like there are some people out there that don't know anything about that, but I did. It definitely was a hit. And I think if I was to do it a little bit differently, I would definitely have a credit card in my own name and not just be a secondary person on a credit card. So definitely have one in your own name. I had credit, even though I was the secondary person, but when that card is gone, you have nothing, and you have to reapply for a new card, and you definitely won't have the same limit as when you had a joint.
Joyce, can some of these things be done in a hurry, like if someone realizes they don't have much time? Some of these preparation steps, like making copies.
Well, that can be done, yes. Yeah. Getting credit, do it while you still have your name on an asset.
Yeah.
So you have something that's there to back you up. The other thing I would tell them would be surround yourself with a team of experts, because you're going through this process. You don't have to go through it alone.
Yeah.
Find a good lawyer, find a financial divorce specialist who will help you with the numbers.
So do you work with accountants?
I work with accountants, with lawyers, with family professionals. And coming to that, the other thing I wanted to talk about was, in this process, you have to, or someone contemplating it, has to figure out what kind of process they want to use for resolution. So that's another thing I would recommend, is educating themselves on that, or asking myself or lawyers, what are the different avenues open? So, there could be litigation, which I don't recommend, because, it's very costly, and you might not get a a result that's good for you and your family, apart from many other things that are not, you know, to your advantage.
What about if you're dealing with things like offshore assets? Are there things that you can do to protect yourself as a spouse?
That's a bit of a difficult question.
It can get very complicated
when
with other laws. And,
yes. Though when you're going through this process, there is always the requirement that you fully disclose what you own and owe. And again, that's where your lawyers will help you and let you know what is the legal position. You have accountants who can help you with forensic accounting if you think there's something not being revealed, but of course that can get very expensive. So coming back to process, and when you're looking at all of this, you might want to look at mediation or a form of collaborative family law, where when you have the resolution and you're working towards it, you have lawyers who are collaboratively trained, you have a financial neutral, a family neutral, and you're all sitting around the table and working towards what is better for the family. So it's a client-centered, it's based on their goals, and you know, you're not going back and forth with emails and telephone calls. You work all together around the table in a settlement that will work.
So you tend to work more with mediators and in a collaborative environment as opposed to people who are out for blood?
Yes.
Have you worked with clients who are out for blood, who don't have kids, who are not going to see each other again when it's all over?
Yes. There's, you know, it's you get different emotions in the process. It's a matter of learning how to control it. Luckily, I haven't had anyone who's slapped each other, as happened with Tara. But
it's only a matter of time.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
We're just about to go to break, but I want to hear more about your advice, Joyce, about what to do if you've already gone through a divorce and you're sort of broken and hit rock bottom, and what do you do next, and also for people who are considering getting married and how they can protect themselves and be smart about that. So we've got lots more coming up. Don't go away. We'll be right back after the break.
Ladies and gentlemen, I will endeavor to describe the feeling on this ship.
The American ship is just trailing the Blue Nose.
Angus should never have agreed to this last race. She's too old.
Eddie!
Johnson, hang it, Mac! Get to it, Mac!
Appears there's some kind of difficulty.
Seems to be something loose up there, I believe.
The topsail's foul! Just once more, old girl, and you can rest.
Her last race and still undefeated, the Blue Nose out of Lunenburg, Nova Scotia was fastest in the world for almost 20 years.
I wish to go on a Disney cruise. Make my wish come true.
Come to savor the moment.
Try Ottawa's best restaurants, bakeries, breweries,
Wineries.
food, desserts. Everyone loves food. You gotta eat, right? With cool music, a silent auction,
and more.
I hope you savor the moment.
Celebrate Ottawa is a collection of stories for, by, and about the people, places, and rich history that make Ottawa such a vibrant place to call home. Tune in Sunday evenings at 7:30.
Hi, welcome back to Ottawa Experts. I'm your host, Barbara Balfour. We're here to talk about how to heal through a divorce, and in particular in this segment we're discussing the financial aspect of things. So what do you do when you just got a divorce, you're flat broke, you've hit rock bottom, you're not really where you thought you'd be financially? We've got Joyce Owen in the studio tonight to tell us a little bit about, you know, what some of the techniques to get through it. What are some of the things you can do to build that credit history back up and get back on your feet?
So, of course, when you're coming through divorce, you may or may not be flat broke.
Yeah.
But it depends, like, because it's two households that have now been created after the divorce. You've got income and expenses that have now been created, and you're stretching income.
Yeah.
So first thing I would say to someone coming out of that is to plan their budget and figure out what it is that you really need as opposed to wants. So if you look at all your fixed expenses and you make sure that you've got enough to cover your rent and water and food and all the things that are absolutely essential, and then the extra bit comes if you have surplus. You know, you've got money for the kids, so for their schooling. All of that is very important when you think about planning for the future. So I would highly recommend someone who's gone through that stage and post-divorce is to work with a financial planner.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure you have this budget. Make sure you're planning for your future. What's important for you, for your family. If you can work together with your spouse on setting money aside for, you know, children's education, that's a key that I think, you know, you should look into. Something else that I wanted to mention was that when you've just gone through divorce, I tell clients to be patient with themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Don't rush in and, you know, make that decision to buy a house or change careers, or give yourself time.
It's like after any big loss in your life.
Exactly.
Basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, because otherwise, when you're too emotional, you can't make a rational decision.
Yeah.
And you regret it later.
That's right. Because you want to give yourself time. You want to let the children settle, if you have children. So give yourself time before you decide to buy another home. Mm-hmm. You know where you want to buy your home, what you want to do. So that's very, very important. Mm-hmm. The other thing too is key priorities to make up a will.
Yes,
and powers of attorney, because divorce revokes a will.
Yes.
Did you know that, Jennifer?
Yeah, I did, and that was the first thing I did.
Yeah.
Once everything got settled, I went like from one door to the next and had my will done.
Yeah.
Redone, correction actually. There. I just said divorce revokes a will. It doesn't.
It does not.
Marriage revokes a will.
Marriage revokes
but divorce doesn't. So that's why it's so important that when you're in this stage of life, you want to make sure that if you pass on, your money goes to maybe someone who's going to look after your kids or whoever you want to.
Because otherwise, if the government sees that you're all in one will, then they think you're one big happy family. When that's not the case, things changed. But if you don't make that change yourself, then your kids are going to be the ones who are left suffering. So, yeah.
We only have a few minutes left before the end of the show, and I know we're about to talk a little bit about what to do when you're preparing to get married. And one of the things that's sort of high on your list, I know, Joyce, is to get a prenup. And I'm wondering, you know, are there any sort of cultural aspects to this where, you know, the idea of divorce or the idea of getting a prenup is so taboo? I mean, do you see that ever come up among your clients?
Yes. Well, actually, when I was looking back into this, prenups existed in Egypt way beyond, I think it was 1539 BC. Where
in Egypt, wow.
Where they had these contracts, marriage contracts. And I know when I bring it up or you talk to people who are just getting married and you say, get a prenup, and they say, what? I mean, especially if they're a young couple.
In love and idealistic.
Yes, why are you thinking about divorce? Now, it may not be required for everyone, but you know, if they're a couple, they're coming in with assets, bringing up the topic of prenup could actually be helpful because you're getting them to think about what's important for the future, get them to think about planning, what So they're discussing this at a happy time. Not that they, they want anything to go wrong, but if it did, you're done with. You don't have all that emotion. And even if you never split up, the process of start talking about a prenup, because you're gathering all the information and what are the financial assets, there's disclosure between the two, you're open, both of you know exactly what you own and owe, and that helps them to plan. So that's very important, especially also if it's a second marriage and you've got blended families and you want to make sure that money goes through to your children, or how do you want to divide your assets on.
Yeah. Jennifer, do you think you would get a prenup if you were to do it all over again?
Yeah, I probably would, because I definitely don't want to have to go through all that again if it ever were to happen. I would hope not, but yeah, just to be proactive and to try and be smart about it, for sure.
We only have a few minutes before the end of the show. I wanted to talk a little bit about this booklet that you're giving away, Joyce, as part of our package. So, Getting Divorced, Don't Get Fleeced, and you have a sheep that you brought us. I love it. It's like a little prop. That's great. So basically it's to prepare you and to make sure that you're protecting yourself in all situations.
Yes, so it goes through the different stages, what you need to do if you're contemplating divorce, what you need to do post-divorce, and the process, whether
if you're about to get married.
Yeah, married and divorced. It takes you through the stages of life.
Goes hand
a little
in hand.
booklet, and it's not wordy, but it's a quick read, and
it's a handy little guide. And where can we find you? How can we get your services?
You can joyceowen.com, or my phone number is 613-728-9573, and you can email me.
Okay.
And
questions.
Questions, I'd be happy to answer or help whoever I can help.
Perfect. And tell me a little bit about your future plans for the book that you've written, Jennifer. Where can we find it, and what are your future plans?
So the book is available on all online bookstores, and it's worldwide. And it's also available at Chapters Canada, Chapters Gloucester, and Prospero Books downtown. It is available in Elmer at Michabou and also at Bouquinard. So yeah, and I hope that Christmas is coming, so I'm hoping that I'll be able to be at some of the Christmas craft sales with the book, so people can always get a copy there. And I have a website, and there's a place to be able to contact, and I can always meet somebody one-on-one, because I really love people's stories and just hearing them.
Yes, it's very healing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, because when I was at Chapters doing signings, people that were strangers were coming up to me and they were telling me their story, and they wanted the book, and they were
hugging you.
Yeah, it was like a really emotional time for them, and I was glad that I could help them in return, and it was just such a good feeling to be able to be there for somebody.
That's wonderful. It's a really heartwarming story, and I'm really glad that you've been able to find the happiness that you deserve. Jennifer and Joyce, I want to thank you so much for joining us tonight and sharing your stories and your expertise. Don't forget to come back next Wednesday at 8 p.m. to watch my colleague Alfonso Cuadro with the next episode of Ottawa Experts. Thanks for watching. Have a great night.